Let's do it. Good deal. All right, welcome everybody. I hope you are all having a fantastic week. I have a PowerPoint. I'll bring it up here. Jim, I'll start off with you. Do you have anything from the CEO desk that you want to share with the group?
Nothing but gratitude.
That's very nice.
Well, I wake up every day just grateful that we have the company that we have and the community that we've built together. And, we're hearing now consistently how many incidents we're catching for our partners. And I'm just grateful that we're able to help folks and all of you in this community. We're early responders, early adopters to help us get this off the ground. So
I think, but it's interesting you said early responders. I think that's right too. I was talking with an MSP this week, completely not about SaaS alerts. They brought it up, Jim. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about training your, tier one help. And I just love everybody's comments on this. Please feel free to chime in. You take a tier one help desk person, which is arguably the lowest paid, right, person, biggest turnover, yet those people, are arguably going to become some of the most important in terms of spotting initial compromise and potential, what could look like, hey, is this nefarious behavior? And I'm just curious, starting with anybody that wants to say this, and I'll finish with this, Jim. I'd like to know everybody's thoughts on, are you thinking about training these people? And if so, how? And then the person said, Jim, what was happening was they were seeing repeated alerts from SaaS alerts, and it was a Chinese threat actor trying to compromise an account. The guy did escalate it finally, but it took his point of where the conversation was going was around training. He's like, yeah, it took a few times, but it wasn't because SaaS alerts wasn't doing his job. SaaS alerts was firing over and over and over. Hey, there's an alert here. There's an alert here. It finally got escalated up, and they shut the account down, et cetera, et cetera. But to the point, I think initial compromise is actually what you guys are excellent at.
I will tell you, our customers appreciate it. We just had a physician go to Mexico, didn't tell us, and he alerted, we shut down his account. We called his office saying, hey, look, this is what's happened. He says, oh, well, he is in Mexico. Fine. We turned it on for that location, and he moved 3 more times without telling us, and we shut him down each time. So the whole point is that in my space, rarely does healthcare need international access.
Right.
So why the heck would we allow it?
You don't have Doctors Without Borders?
No, not yet.
Okay.
And they may not be able to afford me. I don't, I'd have to donate my services for that one.
But curious, and anybody thinking about that in their MSP, like this kind of, I see it as like this challenge, you're the lowest paid, highest, probably arguably the lowest paid, arguably highest turnover position is arguably going to become one of the most important people to see initial compromise in your organization. Do you guys see it that way? Am I seeing this incorrectly?
No, you're seeing it right.
Yeah. So
we see it that way as well.
Yeah.
We have many frontline workers. And so we teach them similar to like, airports, and you see something, say something. If you see something that seems out of the ordinary, create a separate ticket, escalate it up to the security team, allow us to investigate for false positives. Like if you see for example, last week, a tier one ran across an old ransomware note from 2017 that the ransomware got cleaned up, but the text file on someone's desktop, for the note never got cleaned up, and they stumbled upon it after they resynchronized their Dropbox to their desktop, and it was in their Dropbox. And then so they created a ticket for us to investigate and make sure there was something else not going on, and we found that, oh nope, it's just no one ever cleaned up that one text file.
Sounds like you got a good culture though, Ryan, where like I've seen this where I was thinking of this guy Chris Sears at Applied Tech, and they basically have a safe zone, if you will, like for all their tier one people. They're like they got about 10 people in their security. They're bigger. They have 10 people in their security team, and they're like, you will never get in trouble
Yeah.
to escalate something to us. We don't care
Exactly.
what it is. If you think it's something nefarious, you can escalate it. You'll never get in trouble. Like,
And that-
you're wasting our
Because
time.
we see those as teaching moments as well. It's like that if you didn't know right away whether this was good or bad, this is an opportunity for as a security team to teach our tier ones of what is normal behavior and what's not normal behavior.
Right. Are you incenting them at all, Ryan, or considering like, hey, if we train them in X, that we would give them a raise, or, any behavior?
We haven't done that yet. What we are looking for on the tier one side is those kinds of indications to get them on track to becoming a tier two rather than a security vertical. So making them having a better because basically we have it as our tier ones are desktop only, tier twos are desktops and servers, and then they have light networking experience, but then tier three is anything else that's essentially security related or network related.
Got it. It's great to have you back. Missed you last week. We had a good. You missed our best one last week. Just saying. No, Andy, you gonna say something?
Yeah, I believe that this is something to speak to with company culture and rewarding the behavior you want, right? Our tier one people are the people that build relationships with our customers, and
Really well said.
having them, one, enjoy their work, and two, reward the behavior, and they get to make the phone call and say, hey, look, something's come up here. And in my view, having a clear definition of what's the value system of your company, and then hiring people that match that value system, and then rewarding those people and having them see the benefits of working in this environment. That's the special, I guess, the incentive for working with a small business.
Yeah, good stuff. Ben, you guys got obviously a security culture. Anything you guys might be doing, bud?
I was just basically typing in chat that, we use it as a way to train, like I said, the lower tiers so that they can, promote themselves to the upper tiers. But if somebody has an interest in security, we definitely encourage that and try to nurture it as well.
Will you guys pay if someone said, hey, I want to go do Strand's core SOC skills class coming up here? It's, it's pay what you can, but I want the lab. So I don't know, Ben, it's going to be about $400 for the 4 days. Can I do that?
Yeah, we try to as best as we can. It may not always work out that you can take it during normal hours, but if you're willing to put the time in to learn, even if it's after hours, we'll usually pick up the bill for that.
Nice. That's great. Good stuff. Good to hear. Anybody else on this topic? Jim, I think it's really interesting because, again, so much of what you guys are escalating really is coming to that, tier one person, if you think about it.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes, look, depending on how they, partners have response set up, like, the message is going to that tier one person. Sometimes they're making the decision on the account lockout.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
lock or not, am I going to lock this or not lock it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Bryson, absolutely. By the way, Bryson put it. Yeah, Strand is pay what you can. The only difference is if you do labs, you have to pay a certain amount. Like, basically you want 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. That's where there's a minimum. Now you always can say, hey, we're bankrupt or whatever, and plead, that kind of stuff. But yeah, you can pay what you can. He's really awesome in that way. And if anybody doesn't know about Strand and wants to know, he has an upcoming course actually this coming Monday starting. It is core SOC skills, and if you want, I'll throw it in the chat for you. It's phenomenal if you've never taken it and or have your team. Michelle,
Andrew, should that be a segue into?
Yeah, I have it coming up here for you. Ryan, you threw a bunch in there. You want to say that real quick?
Yeah, I figured I'd post it before I said it. Like we publish like internally essentially an ethics guidelines for cybersecurity to help tier ones and everyone on the team to understand what are we trying to uphold. And these are kind of the 10 commandments we kind of came up with from an ethics standpoint of what you need to be concerned about and how to kind of navigate into the unknown.
That's really good stuff, man. Really good. It sounds like you guys, my gut is you got some tenured people on your team. They don't leave typically.
No, I wish that was the case. I mean,
No?
we deal with churn just like everyone else.
Yeah.
You know, there's lots of opportunities in the market right now, and it's, everyone's trying to figure out the best thing for their life. And so
Yeah.
it's not always, as much as we want to retain people for as long as we can, we also want people to grow and to take their life direction where they feel the most comfortable. And we try to make sure that, we put procedures and things in place to allow people to take vacations or not have those kind of corporate knowledge breakpoints where you get stuck
Yeah.
needing someone too badly. Like, we love rock stars, but we don't need all rock stars.
No, that's very fair.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. So yeah, Jim, I will go into that right after I just asked Michelle if she has anything on the marketing docket.
I just have two quick things. One is the reminder that we have a webinar on Tuesday. That's the prospecting webinar. We will have Bob Mitchie will be on that as a little special guest, just to share some of the things he's done. But we will dive into reporting and how that really helps with prospecting. I'm going to send that link. And the other thing, I just wanted to thank those of you who submitted with Cool Rules Challenge. It's officially, the deadline's passed and the judges are hard at work picking the winners. So just a reminder, next week on next week's call, we will be announcing those winners. So be there. It's going to be so exciting.
That's awesome. Awesome stuff. All right. Let me share out my screen. I will do the slideshow thingy. Play from the current slide. Okay, we got this. All right. So Jim, I'll let you maybe set the stage here. I can fill in anything that you'd like me to, but what you are all looking at is Backdoors and Breaches Cloud Edition that just came out. So historically, Black Hills has Backdoors and Breaches, in terms of, there are some cloud instance procedures and compromises in it, but this has been built by Bo Bullock, who is literally their top offensive red teaming cloud pen tester. Jim, let me I don't want to steal the thunder. Let me let you share a little about what you're thinking over the next month or so.
Well, Andrew, you're the one that set it up, so this would not be happening if it wasn't for you. So another great contribution to the community, Andrew. So as Andrew said, like most of you probably know about Backdoors and Breaches and all this great stuff that Black Hills does. And we had Bo Bullock on a webinar, I guess it was, I don't know how long ago it was, maybe 6 months ago now or so. And that got outstanding feedback on that. So Andrew hooked us up with Bo again, based on the fact that, the cloud edition is coming out and we're going to take 3 weeks in the month of July on this call. So it'll be July 13th, 20th, and 27th. We're going to have Bo on as a special guest, and he's going to, Chip and Bo are going to basically team up to walk through Backdoors and Breaches Cloud Edition and go over real life scenarios. Bo's going to play offense, Chip's going to play defense, and we get to see them square off and then engage based on what they've got going on. So it's super exciting to have this going on, and I think it's going to be super educational for a lot of folks. So if you have tier 1 people, we're talking about tier 1 today, right, Andrew? So if you have folks that can take time on, in July on the SASE call and just listen in on that, I think it would be a great benefit, right, for everyone, and just a fantastic educational opportunity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And if you're in a peer group or folks or friends that are MSPs, this is an open call. We'll promote it that way to everybody. So think, literally a guy that decided to want to be a bad guy, Bo could, be as, nefarious as any black hat out there. He's incredibly knowledgeable. So he'll walk through specifically, how he would go through the steps he would go through for initial access, escalation of privilege, lateral movement, those, based on the compromise at hand and what he picks. Obviously we'll probably heavy M365 and a lot of the, whether it's token harvesting or things that we're seeing right now from a social engineering perspective around M365 and data exfiltration in anything around like SharePoints or things of that, SharePoint or things of that nature. And then we can look for Chip to look at mitigating controls and, how, we could put in detections around that. Those could be things, I was thinking, Ryan, when you were saying that, it was almost like a reverse honeypot with them leading the ransomware note on the computer, but, whatever things that are going to be relevant. What do you guys think about that, by the way, in terms of bringing Bo in for 3 weeks and doing different scenarios?
I would find it valuable. I've been really quite struggling trying to figure out the best way to engage in these tabletop exercises with our clients. We've been doing it more internally right now, but I'd like to kind of figure out how to engage the customer experience with it. Some of the objections we've got from our customers right now is they feel like it's not businessy enough, like it's too fun. We're trying to make it feel like yes, it needs to be playful in the sense of it, trying not to take it too seriously, but you need to take it seriously enough that this is an actual exercise. We're not playing games here. This is an actual exercise to go through this information.
Ryan, before we go on to somebody else, one thing I will share, and I'll be happy to share it with you guys. I just got back from IT Nation Secure, and we actually ran a tabletop. It was like a trivial pursuit of 5 questions. And many of them are around, do I, like the multiple choice was, do I call the breach attorney? Do I do this? Do I do that? So it was a little more serious actually than this. I'm happy to send that out to you if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
I take that too, Andrew, if you have it.
No, we only have 1. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. I'll get it to Michelle.
The hell with you.
Yeah, I'll send it to Michelle and we'll get it out to everybody. Andy, were you going to say something, by the way?
A question about this. Would there be any challenges using this, not necessarily at the QBR level, but at a training piece with a customer, maybe in a YouTube or in, is there any restriction on utilizing this for the education process of our clients?
Black Hills has 0 restrictions on usage.
I think that this would be able to demonstrate the reason why they have policies and why they need an incident response plan and how it would play out. And I think that and it doesn't necessarily go to the executive, it goes to the managers and admins because they have to deal with the repercussions, right? And I think that this would be a great way to communicate the concepts that we strive so diligently to do intellectually. This kind of gets it in gamification wise.
Yeah. So we'll eventually, just so you know, maybe we'll bring on actually John and do a webinar at some point in culmination of this. But the way in which they've done backdoors and breaches now is, if you see down here these URLs, so these are actually live URLs. And so where they've kind of taken this in a full 360 is, if you're on the technical side, you would go through this, the procedure, the detection, the tools you could use, and then you would go and watch some training, right, by one of the team members. And then from the training, it launches out into actually their labs, and it's into what's called Meta CTF. So you are actually doing and then actually taking the challenge and scoring. So the goal of what John's trying to take this into is not just, hey, here's the situation, let's talk about it, which is important, but then can your people actually do what they need to be able to do?
I think you talk with John, I would suggest this: why not create a customer version or an end user version and say, look, this is what you're going to see. Flip it over. This is what the ISP needs to be doing. And this is why you need these policies, right? This is great for us, but
Yeah.
creating something like that for the customer would be awesome as well, I think.
Yeah.
So Andrew,
Hey, Andy.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that you can actually make your own deck too.
Yep.
It requires a little bit of programming skills, but you can make your own deck.
Yep. A really good point, Ben. You want, if you want, there's a GitHub on it. Yeah, and you really good.
Thank you. I wasn't
Thank
aware
you.
of that.
Yeah,
So that would be grateful if we could put that in the chat as well.
Yeah.
so Black Hills, I'm not very familiar with them. What are they?
They're arguably considered probably the gold standard in pen testing and red teaming in the country. John Strand was a 15-year SANS instructor. He's the owner of Black Hills. They're a team of about 100. If you're in the Fortune 100, more than likely you're being pen tested by Black Hills. I was about 2.5, 3 years ago, met John, and we brought him into the MSP ecosystem, and we bring in all his training and education into so there's Black Hills, and there's his training division called Anti-Siphon. And what's unique about John is he has a chip on his shoulder because he's rags to riches. He was dirt poor, and he has a real problem with how cybersecurity training is delved out today, which is there's huge gates, right? In other words, if I want to take a SANS course, it's send somebody out for 5 days, 7 days, it's $9,000. It's really unrealistic for people. And you have to have all these qualifications. And he's like, well, what about, the mom that has 2 jobs and would really like to get into cybersecurity? So he's built a whole pay what you can model where there's literally an entire curriculum. They're doing instructor led, they have on demand. And so his goal is to make cybersecurity training available to anybody in the world. They've trained over 100,000 people in their platform so far.
I'm familiar with FR Secure, but this is
FR Secure is mainly around and Evan does great things around CISSP, which is mainly governance. Strand actually is, you're talking about literally hands-on keyboard, starting off with, do your people know how to do Windows command line? Do they know Linux command line, right? And then building up from there. Do they want to become threat hunters, pen testers, security analysts, SOC analysts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
how do we tie this back to SaaS alerts?
Well, in this particular case, we were talking about the cloud edition, which is very relevant to SaaS alerts, right?
Yes.
It's M365 related.
Good.
If that makes sense.
Their physical cards are sold out for the cloud edition right now. I was about to purchase it.
I don't think they went live yet. That's probably why, Ryan.
Okay.
Yeah, they're printing up the decks right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes, we need SaaS alerts cards. I like that.
Yeah, it would be great if we could get branded SaaS alerts cards. That would be even nicer.
I mean, Huntress has one. Why not?
Yeah, I was gonna say it was a whole game you play like Dungeon and Dragon with an expansion pack.
Yes, it's 100% correct. So yes, that is possible. We could do that.
I'm writing it down right now.
I think actually creating something that would work with a customer and introducing why policies, this would be huge, because this helps really bring it into reality.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of MSPs that do this with their co-managed customers. Certainly, it's a lot easier if you're dealing with a technical group to get their attention. Hey, you guys handle this, we handle this. Let's walk through it right now.
There it is. That's the original card set. Yep.
So good. All right, let's move on. So with Michelle's help, I ran into some stuff that I thought might be useful. I'd love your guys' feedback. And that is talking about interacting with customers, Andy. It is using a risk profile to identify their SaaS applications, or SaaS application risk profile, if you will. We created 2 versions. These are for you. One version looks like this, and one version looks like this. Wanted to, first off, get your thoughts on either or, if you like one versus the other. But basically if you think about it, there's really, I don't know about you all, but there's really no good system out there for talking to your customers about inventory, identifying gaps, continuity, and then, we stuck in the SaaS alerts monitoring. So for example, when it comes to inventorying, are you sitting down or, are you having conversations, with the executives and saying, hey, can we talk to your procurement people? We know you're using certain SaaS applications that we're provisioning for you, like M365, but like a lot of companies these days, because SaaS applications can be just simply purchased, AKA shadow IT, we find that critical information, right, can get leaked out of an organization because, maybe someone just, threw in a company credit card and purchased a SaaS app. So let me just pause for a minute, and anybody have any commentary on, phase one or step one, which is gathering SaaS inventory, and are you doing it today? And if so, how are you doing it?
Right now, the main thing that we're doing is just auditing Office 365 enterprise application lists, and then cross-referencing that with we've been making a SaaS application list and URLs and trying to create detections on our firewall platforms to try to identify just an auditing of which applications are in use to try to engage in a conversation. But right now, it's a pretty manual process at the moment.
Yeah, isn't that amazing, Ryan? If you think about it, like, you think CIS controls and like, hey, take a software inventory. Well, knowing that arguably 60-70% of applications now in the SMB are SaaS, it's like, there's a huge void or gap. So
well, and what we're finding, like in the content filtering kind of platforms or any kind of web monitoring platform, the categories they use are very different than the kind of categories we would use for this kind of investigation, in the sense of oftentimes they'll say like, these are productivity apps versus these are, social apps. And, there's not really a classification of like, these are SaaS apps, right? Like, here's apps that don't require installations. These are web apps. There's not really like a web app style category. And so we're having to kind of go through those lists and try to figure out which, kind of application by application, where's the risk vector for these different SaaS apps.
Yeah, really good stuff. Really, really, really good stuff. Anyone else doing something like that or differently? Anybody care?
Sorry, guys, couldn't move my
I have an
mouth.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask a how-to question. How can we, other than monitoring the traffic through the firewall, determine what apps are being used? See, that's the part. I think browser extensions are a big part of this, right? How do we best manage this from a cloud inventory perspective? Because when you think about it that way, I don't know how.
Yeah, well, like I said, Andy, I'll believe it or not, point number 2 is one of your biggest key takeaways. Yes, there are things that can slip through the cracks, but you might be surprised sitting down with whoever's in charge of payables, what might be in that list. So that is the arguably from a governance and talking about policy, because you just did a minute ago. Hey, do you have a policy for when your company subscribes to new applications? Can anybody just take a company credit card and do it? How do you do it today? Right. So huge, just sit down with that person that pays the bills.
So we're using, maybe doesn't apply completely, like they said, how do you detect all the SaaS tools you're using, but we're using Gradient to pull from our vendors and pull from our Autotask And then it cross-references and lets you know of any opportunities that something that it's detecting is not being built.
Yeah, another way, by the way, if your customers are authenticating to other SaaS applications through 365 or Google, we're going to capture all of that in our reporting as well. So that could be a place to start.
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. And I think, where is that here in SaaS alerts? I think we do talk about, where is it? Not there.
You would still pick it up even though we're using a third-party IDP, because it's at the end of the day coming in through Azure.
Yeah, authentication tools.
Right.
Here we go.
Yep.
Here we go. Yeah, absolutely. Look, anything that, where you're using some type of, the credentials of M365 or Azure, that's another area. Definitely. Anybody doing anything else? Has anybody been in a situation where all of a sudden they found out a customer is using an application and we're like, wow, we had no idea?
The one we get all the time is Salesforce. Oftentimes, like, as a managed provider, since we're not providing the app, they've gone to someone else to buy Salesforce for CRM, and they don't tell us.
And Ryan, with those situations, once you find out, are you using SaaS alerts to monitor it?
We're trying to, we're trying to engage in that conversation right now. We didn't realize just how many of our clients are using the product because we're not managing it. They feel like they have management of the application through Salesforce, and they don't realize that they have essentially a gap in coverage. And so we're trying to have that conversation right now.
Ryan, do you have a lot of folks, Ryan, that use Salesforce?
Not a lot. So like this has been kind of we've noticed this as detections. We've seen this through network traffic. And sometimes what we've noticed is it has been from other salesmen coming into the organization, getting on their guest Wi-Fi and then interacting with their Salesforce platform. So we've had quite a few false positives.
Yes.
But we've been investigating that much more thoroughly than we have in the past.
Salesforce is notoriously unprotected.
Yes. That's why we're concerned about it. It's one of our primary apps.
This is an area, like, we're starting to talk now to more and more Salesforce integrators that, this is what they do is moves as changes customizations to Salesforce, generally for bigger companies that are using Salesforce. But I see this as a massive opportunity for MSPs that want to move up into the mid-market, move upstream a little bit, take SaaS alerts there, because when you think about what protects, I don't know how many people know, but there's natively to Salesforce, they have their own level of protection, which does some things, but is super expensive and doesn't do a whole lot relative to what we do. And then there's also something out there called Fair Warnings, which charges $18 per user per month just for Salesforce.
Jim, before someone else interjects, I just want to share something. This is, Ryan, like what you were just sharing in those conversations. I know this is an example of one shared responsibility model, which is Microsoft's. And this is what I would, if I was back at, an MSP, I would probably look to build like a challenger sale around this. Like, hey, Ryan, the majority of business owners I talk to, when it comes to SaaS applications, feel, their data is, the responsibility of that data and the backup of that data is Salesforce or Microsoft. Responding, maintaining the identities of your people. There's a belief that those are, your providers, et cetera, et cetera. What if I told you that's not the case at all? And God forbid, one of your employees deletes, an entire customer, list and, that it's gone. There's nothing, you can do. It's your response, blah, blah, blah. So I think maybe what are your thoughts on a shared responsibility model as kind of a mechanism, and then kind of show them, lastly, I'll say, and then I'd love your feedback, show them the verbiage. Like, this is from Microsoft, literally. You own your data and identities. You are responsible. Not us, you.
One of the things I agree with you. Some of this has been, I have to give you credit, Andrew, in the sense of you've pushed back on me a few times about the challenge sale responsibility of like pushing back a little harder on some of our clients, and I've taken that to heart. One of the things that's been helpful for us is during the cyber insurance process, when you fill out those forms, I've had to communicate a lot with our technical account managers for them to really understand that this is a relationship between the customer and that insurance provider. We are here as a consulting apparatus and help them acquire these things, but they are ultimately responsible for their own company. And so that also aligns with what you're talking about here, in the sense of, if you don't know these things are happening on your computers or with your employees, here's some information about what we see, observations, and this is an opportunity to speak with those approvers and executives to go through that process. Oftentimes, they don't even know these things are happening. Oftentimes, these employees are, what we find, are going out and getting these software and trying to do these things to improve their workflow, and they don't tell their managers. And so they don't even know these things are existing on their network. And we try not to block applications by default when it comes to web access, because some people need to use it for different situations, and we don't want to have a default kind of deny policy, say for Dropbox, for example, unless we've engaged with the client and set that expectation. And so we're doing a lot more of kind of visibility and reporting around SaaS applications, but we're trying to go kind of quite slowly, in the sense of getting very familiar with each SaaS app and engaging with the client application by application. It has been a little too amorphous to try to do it holistically, where it's like they don't necessarily know how to define SaaS apps in that way. Like there's kind of two different buckets we've kind of found, is does it require an install versus not? And that's kind of where we are dividing that right now, of if you're only accessing this via the web, the only way we can see visibility is through network monitor and content filtering kind of procedures versus application install lists, right? And so we've caught a lot of the stuff that have an install, but even like Dropbox, for example, has changed some of their practices where they're emphasizing using the web interface more often. So we're finding less and less people interacting with the installed versions of things, which have made us have to change some of our procedures.
Yeah, last thing I'll say, and then I'll come to you, Andy. Ryan, I think this is where it comes back. You don't have to address every single SaaS app, but maybe again, this is where you start with policy. Like, hey, Ryan, if you're the CEO, Ryan, would be like, look, can just get me on the fairway. Like, talk to me about how you guys see the use of SaaS applications. Like you told me your EMR, for example, is your number one most critical application. Like, what if I want to buy another app, or you know what I mean? Like, kind of walk that. How does that happen? Like, just let them talk. Not like, this is what we need to do. What happens? Walk us through the scenario. And it's the same kind of thing like with incident response. Walk me through a scenario where, I don't know, somebody takes, a huge amount of your customer data. What happens in your company? Like, walk me through the chain. If that happened, what you guys would do. Andy, you're on mute, I think, bud.
Sorry about that. Thank you for, I have a question for SaaS Alerts. This seems like a really good opportunity to find ways to take advantage of Unify and the device-based RMM to help do a cloud inventory or cloud app inventory. And this would be a terrific sales tool as well. I'm perceiving that there's the capability to audit extensions and to track this and come back. And Unify would be the tool to help do that.
Yes. So, we've scratched the surface right now, what Unify can do. just releasing it in April. But we know that we'll be able to do so much more on a go-forward basis, and discovery is definitely part of that.
All right, well, if I can be of any help with that, as far as the VSA product line on specifically the 10 version, I'd be open to it.
We can't hear you. Is it me or can we not hear him?
I'm sorry, can you hear me
Yeah.
or no?
Yeah, now we can.
All right, I was going to say, if I can be of help on the VSA 10 side, I'd be happy to.
Okay, great.
All
We
right.
appreciate that, Andy.
Thanks.
Cool. Okay. So Jim, let's go back here just a little bit. First off, is it, you know, before we go on to identifying gaps in continuity, do you guys have a preference? By the way, would this be helpful for you guys to kind of walk through a client with? Obviously, you know, you'd want to, these are verbose and we'll give you something to edit, you know, so you can have bullet points. But is something like this helpful to kind of walk them through?
Yes, color wise, I would ask you to make it more vibrant, but otherwise, yeah.
And do you have a preference? Ryan, any thoughts on this or anybody else? Like,
It definitely is helpful. You know, our marketing and sales teams always like to change a few words here and there, but other than that, like, yeah, it looks good. I like how simplified it is, like especially per page. What we find is like in every category, if you go about more than 3-4 bullet points, then you start losing people. So you hit the sweet spot here where it's enough information to convey it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point, right? Maybe we like highlight, and again, we'll give you, like Michelle, we can give them the PowerPoint, right, where they can just kind of edit, change it. But like maybe like, you know, we highlight as an example, oh, can I talk to your procurement, you know, person?
Right.
Oh, can I, you know, can you help me figure out this? You know, we were concerned that there could be gaps, you know, in terms of, you told me you're, you know, we found out, you know, just today you're using Salesforce. We had no idea. Can I ask a question? You know, do you guys put in like, you know, what kind of customer data do you put in there? Do you put in, you know, and by the way, is some of that customer data, like hypothetically, Ryan, are any of those customers that are in there potentially working with the defense industrial base, or, you know, where they might get an audit back to them and then ask, you know, what kind of information, you know, are your service providers, you know, storing about you? And now all of a sudden you've just told me you're putting their POs, you told me you're putting this, and this in Salesforce. What if I told you that's gonna be a big no-no for you, you know, when you get your 800-171, if they ever get around to CMMC audit, you know, like,
yeah,
so
oftentimes they don't even think about the new emerging trends when it comes to the privacy aspect of these things. Even in international markets, it's completely changing how these SaaS apps are having to do business.
You know, it'd be helpful with this as well would be stories about specific verticals, talking about here's how this made a difference in this vertical for this particular customer, and here's how it made another. So if we could get some contributions to that, that would be helpful.
yeah, I mean, I think those are going to come from the MSPs, right, Andy? So
Well,
if you think about it, you got, you know,
Yep.
you got to think through what are the regulated businesses out there, and do your customers, right, have customers or suppliers that are probably going to go, hey, we're getting an audit, and you're going to fill out all this information. And if they get an audit, you can guarantee service provider is going to be one of those pieces of it, which means it's you. So, you know, it's probably not like too hard to think about what regulated you know, your customer. Now you deal with healthcare. Most MSPs are horizontal in nature. So, you know, Ben, as an example, like you probably have customers that are, you know, dealing in financial or healthcare, or, you know, potentially manufacturing, right, where they could get audited and they're going to come back to you and go, hey, I'm getting this audit. Fair?
We've been getting a lot of customers asking about CMMC and the FTC, and so we'll be using SaaS, so it's a lot more to check those boxes. monitoring is huge.
Yeah. Do you have any clients that will be CMMC level 2, do you feel?
We have one that we're talking to, yes. They started talking about 3 and like we had to back them down. You got to walk before you can run. But yeah, our biggest thing is just not only do they have to hit 2, but we have to hit it as well, having
Yeah.
access to their data. So that's a hurdle we haven't jumped over quite yet.
Yeah. Very cool. Any other thoughts from anyone else? Now this is the area where we can conduct those tabletops, right? This is where we could walk through. Oh, you told me, your mission critical application that is representative where, all of your revenue sits is a SaaS platform. So let me pull out the shared responsibility model of said SaaS application, and let's walk through a tabletop, right? This doesn't have to be difficult, right? You're responsible for backing up the data. Right now, you didn't even tell me you have Salesforce, right, Ryan? And walk me through, right? All your Salesforce data gets compromised and taken. Walk me through what happens. They're going to look at you like, what do you mean walk me through what happens?
Yeah, oftentimes they go like, isn't that what you're supposed to be doing? And we're like, well, the things that you're paying for, yes. Here's the a general version of a response plan, but we need to go into the details of this kind of response for this application and this application. Like if we don't know these things exist, or then we can't respond to them. And so that starts engaging that conversation, we find.
Absolutely. And again, I don't think it's a hard quote unquote tabletop to have. It's literally a conversation like, hey, Ryan, I had no idea you were running this. Do you care if all the data gets taken? And you like, what do you mean? Do I care? Of course I care. All our customer data. Okay, well, did you know you're responsible for that data? Like, we had no idea you're using Salesforce, just so you know. You never told us, right? When did you start using it? How much data is in there? What kind of data is in there? Do you have a backup? Are you paying for any type of, Salesforce data backup? Are you paying for any, identity, monitoring in that platform, blah, blah, blah. Again, these are things that I think they would go, holy crap, we didn't even think about this. Right. And that's where you can add a ton of value. Has anybody gotten into those situations where SaaS platforms have lost data or identity compromise outside of 365?
So far, the only ones we've run into are synchronization applications. So like Dropbox, stuff like that, where an infection takes place on a consumer machine that travels over to the business world.
Okay. So a BYOD, Ryan, in that case?
Correct. Or sometimes even it's like their personal computer at home, they'll sign into their Dropbox, their business Dropbox accounts there. Their son gets on their computer, downloads a virus, gets on their, the default policy now with Dropbox is backs up your desktop and documents. And so like those things can get back into the platform and then go to a BYOD device and then get onto other corporate systems if they don't have enough measures in place or network segmentation.
But what a great, boy, what a great tabletop that could be, right? Or, like incident, drive an incident, complete incident response project.
Yeah, what we're looking to try to do now is try to build almost like TikTok like shorts to convey a story in a scenario where the customer doesn't have to go through the tabletop exercise the first time. They can kind of watch an example video to understand like, okay, here's our 3 or 4 examples of a tabletop exercise to choose from. Do any of these fit your current needs, or these are the ones we believe fit your needs? Let's do these types of things. We're having a hard time just conveying what that looks like in paper or in dialogue, and so we're starting to look at kind of short form video to convey what this would look like, because they have a hard time, because it's not something even nowadays people don't even do fire drills. So it's like, physical fire drills where they all leave the building and do something. That is stopped as general practice. And so there's not a like real world examples that a lot of people know what it physically is going to feel like or look like.
Sure. Good stuff. All right. So Jim, I'm going to pause there with like 5 or so minutes left and, open it up for questions. And I'm just curious if people have any things that they would like to be seeing us do. We have obviously Bo coming in July, but, for the next few weeks, are there any topics you want us to cover? Don't all speak at once.
I was going to suggest maybe some, as you talk about the winners for the Unify contest or the contest, talk about some ideas of how to better use SaaS alerts and use that as a platform for it.
Yeah, I was on actually with a partner yesterday, Andrew and folks, and he said, look, I don't think we understand all the value that SaaS alerts delivers, and I don't think that we're necessarily using it to its fullest capability. And I would agree with this individual because I think most don't. He said to me, look, I would love to know what best in class looks like. I would love to know, like, who are the partners that are leveraging this to the hilt and are getting the absolute most out of it and the steps they're taking to make that happen. So would that be, if we did something like that, as like almost like a case study, would that be helpful to folks?
I would find that helpful.
Yeah,
I
sure.
always find it really good to see an example of like, here's the top class. Here's an example of everything you can possibly do, because you can immediately start comparing yourself against it and be like, where can you achieve it and where are you falling short?
Got it. Okay, cool. So Ben Jones will be presenting next week.
Getting that PowerPoint ready.
Okay, that's helpful.
I think it's always good for partners to hear from other partners, right, Jim? How people are leveraging it and how they compare, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's always really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say today, Andrew, you framing shared responsibility is a good thing. Just talking about the basics are sometimes really helpful too.
Yeah, no doubt. I'll put the URL of that one in there, which is, again, I would argue that the majority of your customers have no clue about what they're responsible for.
No question about it. They just think, hey, you know what? I'm in the cloud now. I'm good.
Yep.
Most people don't appreciate multi-factor authentication or the liabilities that are taken on as they cloud move. So I'm really coming to the impression we're in this environment all day long, and most people, it's like the keys to the house. They don't even think about the lock, right? They just turn the key and they go. They don't get how technology is really like a kitchen knife, right? If it's dull, it's going to hurt you, and if it's sharp, it's going to be great.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. Anything else before we wrap up for today, Jim?
Nothing that comes to mind.
All right.
Looking forward to announcing the winner next week.
So we'll spend some time around that, Jim, maybe the winner, walk through that particular use case, if you will.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll walk through the rule. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have 3 winners, and we'll walk through probably specifically the first place winner and what their rules are. And so everyone will know, and then we'll publish that template, if you will.
Okay.
And
Perfect.
go from there.
All right. Michelle, anything in closing?
No, actually, Anthony reminded me, we do have a Reddit community now that I just created this week, and I did drop that URL in the chat. So I know we have the LinkedIn one, but I know a lot more people are on Reddit. So if you want to pop over there, and we can keep the conversation going.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you all on the 15th and wishing you all a fantastic week, remainder of the week and weekend, and take care. See you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.